Good evening and welcome to tonight's Undaunted. Bringing into the news untold stories, I am Tabitha Akar. Let's begin. Tonight, bringing you the latest developments from Ambazonia, where insecurity and political tension continue to shape daily life. From shocking acts of violence on our roads to escalating political intrigue in French Cameroon, we highlight stories that affect families, commuters, and the future of leadership. In Buea, a man was shot while bravely resisting armed robbers attempting to assault his wife. A clear incident of rising crime and vulnerability in our communities. Along the Bamenda road, drivers have launched an indefinite strike protesting kidnappings, harassment, and extortion that threaten both livelihoods and passenger safety. Now we'll take our attentions to political news. The alleged appointment of Frank Emmanuel Biya as Vice President and Head of the Armed Forces in colonial French Cameroon has sparked a heated debate over succession, power consolidation, and the possibility of a father-to-son rule. Will this lead to stability or threats to democracy, especially as Ambazonia war continues? These stories reflect the everyday struggles, courage, and political dynamics that define life in Ambazonia today. Tonight, we dig deeper, asking the hard questions, analyzing implications, and keeping you informed. Well, let's head into the prime headlines on Undaunted tonight. And these are the prime headlines on Undaunted tonight. President Sako pays tribute to Ambassador Henry Fosung, launches Ambazonia media diplomacy drive. Also tonight, Frank Biya appointed Vice President. French Cameroon faces father-to-son succession debate. Also tonight, to take a look at Buea, driver shot while defending wife from armed robbers in Bonduma. Also, security crisis on Bamenda road. Drivers launch indefinite strike over kidnapping and extortion. Also coming in from Africa, Nigeria Christian group rejects army claim in Kaduna church attack. Also tonight, coming in from the globe, Trump escalates threat as deadline looms for Iran to reopen Strait of Hormuz. All this we will look into. We get into the full briefings of Undaunted tonight, bringing to your way His Excellency Dr. Samuel Sako, President of Ambazonia, today honored the late Ambassador Henry Fosung, a veteran diplomat and former chairman of the Southern Cameroon's National Council, while calling for renewed focus on Ambazonia's media and narrative strategy. President Sako began by expressing deep sorrow over the passing of Ambassador Fosung on March 31st, 2026, describing him as a veteran diplomat who witnessed history from within and dedicated his life to service. He recalled Fosung's distinguished career in French Cameroon's diplomatic corps and his later commitment to Southern Cameroon's liberation. Instead of accepting the comfort of political recycling in the post-colonial public order, Ambassador Fosung chose a path of principled engagement for his people, the Ambazonian people. Let's take a look.
With a tribute to one of the finest of sons we have had in this struggle for the restoration of the sovereignty of the Southern Cameroon, His Excellency Ambassador Henry Fosung, Grand Patriarch Commander of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia. It is with deep sorrow, but also with gratitude to God for a life of uncommon service, that we mourn the passing of His Excellency Ambassador Henry Fosung, who reportedly departed this life on March the 31st, 2026. Our official archives recognize him as a former chairman of the Southern Cameroon's National Council and a veteran diplomat of the Republic of Cameroon before his latter role in the Southern Cameroon's liberation struggle. Ambassador Henry Fosung belonged to that generation of Southern Cameroonians who saw history from the inside. He was amongst the early Southern Cameroonian diplomatic trainees of the post-colonial era. He rose through the diplomatic ranks, and served with distinction before retiring from the colonial government service. Later, instead of accepting the quiet comfort of political recycling in a quasi-one-party order, he chose the harder road: opposition, principle, and national duty. That decision alone said much about the man. He did not merely speak of change, he joined it. Accounts of his public life on the colonial side consistently describe him as a senior diplomat who later became a leading figure in the Southern Cameroon's cause. His place in our national story is secure. Historical sources identify him as one of the early leaders of the Southern Cameroon's National Council in the mid-1990s.
May his soul rest in peace. While following the tribute, His Excellency President Sako turned to the launch of the Ambazonian Broadcasting Corporation fundraiser, emphasizing the importance of controlling the narrative in the struggle for Ambazonia. Let's watch.
Today I'm also here to launch the ABC fundraiser and call all of us to do all to win the battle of the minds. Fellow Ambazonians, friends of our cause, partners, and defenders of justice, my fellow supporters of the Ambazonia Broadcasting Corporation, today we are not merely launching a fundraiser to help ABC. We should be launching the next phase of our struggle. The battle for narratives, the battle for truth, and ultimately the battle for the mind. History has taught us something very important. No conflict is decided only on the battlefield. Every struggle is ultimately settled in the arena of ideas, where one story prevails over another. Nations do not rise or fall only because of what is true, but because of what is believed. And if we do not tell our story, others will tell it for us. And now, because of this, we must expand. We must reach out, reach our people at the grassroots, in the villages, in the towns, at home, and abroad, so that our message is not distant, but present, understood, and owned by us.
The President further announced a significant expansion of ABC television to reach grassroots communities, regional audiences, and international supporters. He stressed that communication must run ahead of diplomacy and that a well-documented strategic media presence is critical for advancing Ambazonia's cause globally. Every message must reinforce our legitimacy, strengthen our case, and advance our position in the international arena. His Excellency President Sako described ABC as more than a media platform. It is the voice of the people, the shield of our narrative, and the instrument through which we present our truths to the world. He urged supporters to contribute to the initiative, emphasizing that vision without resources remains only an intention. Let's watch.
Let me take a moment to express my deep gratitude to you, our wonderful patrons and supporters and club members. You have sustained this vision. You are its backbone. And I count on you again today. Really. To all who answered the call in December last year, I want to say you rose when it mattered and you made a difference. Yes, you did. And to those who received my personal invitation for today, it is not because I believe you have abundance. It is because I know your loyalty, I know your commitment, and your readiness to stand when the mission becomes critical. We did well then, and we have done well before. That's my confidence. But now, we must do even better. Because the battle is not over, and Ambazonia must be free. I call on you, every one of us, not just to give, but to invest in the voice of our nation, the voice of our struggle.
While concluding his speech, President Sako called on Ambazonians and allies to unite in defending their story. If we go silent, we surrender the narrative. If we surrender the narrative, we risk losing the meaning of our struggle. Let us rise together, speak with one voice, and win the battle of the mind. Well, it is the battle of the mind, and the media is the right channel to the society. Well, right here, this is the report we are having, and many more will be dissecting in tonight's show. But well, right before we get into other report, I'm not just here alone. I'm here with our legal mind, Barrister Mbeseha, who will be giving us a lot of comment and analysis as regarding the report we'll be having here tonight. Barrister Mbeseha, good evening, sir, and good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, sir. Well, today, President Sako paid tribute to the late Ambassador Henry Fosung, highlighting his legacy in diplomacy and the southern Cameroon struggle. It's a solemn moment for Ambazonia, as we just lost an ambassador. I believe, as the president has explicitly stated, Ambazonia chooses to look at the significant impact of Ambassador Henry to the struggle. Now, right here, what's your thoughts on his leadership, Ambassador, in inspiring other voices of the struggle for self-determination?
Well, say, President Sako paid that tribute, and there's a lot behind that tribute. Ambassador Fosung died, yes. He died in his 90s, so he's not a small boy. So he has been there since 1960, when we purportedly joined his boy in 1961. He was an adult. And so he's an example of somebody that the new generation, the present generation going forward has to emulate. He rose up to the top. He rose to the pinnacle of the Cameroon administration as ambassador. Serving in United Nations, serving in Russia, and other places. But he retired. But like any other Anglophone, like we call them, he thought that Yaoundé was the home to be. I acquired property there, he built houses in Yaoundé. But he did not forget Buea. When he retired, he went back to Buea and occupied his property there. And the most important thing I want you to understand is, taking his example, I've said he died at 90, he could have died. Nobody killed him, it's not an accident. It's not the war that killed him, he died of natural causes. But what he has done throughout the years of his service served as a humiliation to people, and most importantly, to those in Yaoundé today. Ambassadors who are in Yaoundé today who are occupying offices of importance, prime ministers, directors. It served a good lesson to them. And this is a lesson they have to learn from it. Ambassador Fosung rose to the level, he acquired property, he went back to Buea. He did not forget Buea as a home. And what he realized later on was that what he had invested in Yaoundé was not the home to be. He were in the wrong spot, so he realized. And so when the temple for Ambazonian freedom started in 1993, with the AAC, that led to the SNC. He realized that it was better for us to come home. That was 1993, many years ago. And he invested heavily in the return home. The first investment he did, which I want all the other Ambazonians who are staying in Yaoundé to emulate, was he went to Yaoundé and sold all the property that he had. He said, look, this is the wrong place for me. We're in the wrong spot. This is 1990. 30 years had passed since we purportedly joined these people. He realized that we were in the wrong spot. And then he sold all what he had. I didn't go and sell the money, he didn't invest money in the bank. No, whatever thing he acquired from the sale of his own personal property, he invested in the liberation struggle to liberate southern Cameroon, to liberate Ambazonia. Because the ANC started in 1993, by 1995, the die-hard supporters, the people who created the so-called federation, in the name of Foncha, in the name of Indefinite, were still all alive. And they realized that it was a wrong spot. They decided to go back to the United Nations, who were the authors of the independence by joining. They had no money to do that job, because a ticket from Cameroon to New York for a day or 2 weeks is money. And Fosung used his own personal investments. The money he sold from his personal property in Yaoundé, and funded the trip back to New York, just to play the cause. Of course, they played the cause there. All of them are now today dead. Muna is dead. Foncha is dead. Most of the people who went there, maybe except Dr. Munzo, are dead. But he came back from the United Nations. Whatever response they had from there, he did not give up until his death. He realized that if the United Nations was not coming back to finish its job, we must do something else to complete the job ourselves. And he remained steadfast on that track until his death. And so I've said that his death has a lot of meaning, not because of what he did yesterday, but for the people who are there today. Not me, not you. For those who occupy privileged positions in Yaoundé. Because in those days, ambassador posts, there were fewer than government ministers in Yaoundé. And therefore, to be an ambassador, you were equal to a minister. To be an ambassador, you were the top caliber of the state. And so if he was there, he enjoyed all what senior state officials enjoy. They had bodyguards, they had everything that you can imagine. He had those things. And then he, in spite of all that, where he would have said, I would die in Yaoundé, he had store buildings there. He had a lot of property there. He said, look, we're in the wrong spot. He realized it early. He's dying today, 2000-something, 30 years after the event. So he realized it early enough. He was too young. And he decided to say, well, we're coming back home. And I will not just say, I will not preach the coming back home. I will do it practically. And so the young Gutes, the Ngole, the whoever, there are so many of them, the Muslims, can they learn from this Barr who is not dead? They should learn something. If they cannot learn from him alone, they should know a combination of what Henry Fosung did with Njoli Tumbe. Njoli Tumbe was living in Douala. He worked in Douala. They were running the Akintola accounting firm. And when he came to retirement, he came back to Buea and took up this course. We have been citing his name forever and ever. There is no treaty agreement, union treaty. That is Njoli Tumbe. And so these are two eminent sons of Ambazonia who coincidentally all lived in Buea. And then they are all dead. Njoli Tumbe died a couple of years back. Nobody killed him. He too died of old age. But the doctrine he preached did not die with him. Today we're talking about Ambassador Fosung. I've said nobody killed him. He died of old age, natural consequences. But what he stood for is still alive. And I'll conclude this by reminding us that a few years back, before the death of Ben Muna was the son of S.T. Muna, the architects of this nonsense they call unification. And he was an educated man. He was a lawyer of the highest standard you could imagine. And he told us on his dying bed, young men and women, the liberation is for you to liberate yourselves. I'm dying like my father who are dead, but we will not come back to fight for you. You have to fight for your own liberation. And so the messages that people have sent to us, the last one being Ambassador Fosung, is not a thing that we can forget. And so we'll have to fight. Our elders who are living in Yaoundé in the comfort of Yaoundé and thinking that they are doing something marvelous, well, if they can learn something from the Fossungs, from the Benmunas, from the Funchas, from the Jolly Tumbes, that will be a wonderful achievement that we've had. And can they do it? I guess they can. Because this morning, to conclude, I saw an article written by Akere Muna talking about the vice presidency, denouncing the whole nonsense, saying that it is a total betrayal. If Akere Muna, after all these years fighting for the union, after standing elections of presidential candidates, can realize at the last minute that we're in the wrong spot, he's a very educated man, he has well international standing. If he can say that at the last hour, who of us cannot say it? Those of us who are still on board singing the song of Yaoundé should emulate from these people, one who is still alive, Akere Muna, and the rest who are dead, Ambassador Fosung, Jolly Tumbe, and hundreds of others. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Barrister Mbeseha. Indeed, his life was an impact. But then we see that the president also spoke about reaching grassroots audiences while also targeting international communities in multiple languages coming down to the Ambazonian TV. This is indeed a welcome development for all of us here at ABC. Now, in your view, what do you think about the effectiveness of this development to ensure realistic progress as we move on for Ambazonia's liberation struggle? How effective?
I think it's one of the best things that we could do to tell the world about our problem. If you cannot hear it in French, you can hear it in English. If you cannot get it in English, you cannot get it in French, you'll get it in Pidgin, which is a good move that we're reaching out to them. But above all, this message is not meant for Ambazonians. Ambazonians are supposed to know it themselves. If there's an Ambazonian who do not know the cause of this problem, he is far behind. He should do the research. We're sending out those messages to buy some foreigners. We ourselves should be educated. We should be the Munas. Muna does not need to go back to school. I mean, Akere, to know what he's writing now. Muna did not need to go back to school. Ben, who died, to realize that we're on the wrong spot. The Fossungs, the Jolly Tumbes, their children are alive. Let them join this struggle. Let us free ourselves. Freedom was made for the living, not for the dead. And they are dead. If they had freed us before dying, we, their children, would have inherited a better life. What ABC is doing in all these languages is very, very important. It should be encouraged. Whatever thing you can do to encourage that message going out, we must. But what else can we do other than giving money? That message going out cost money. That was the occasion on which the president was making that speech. It cost money. I've said here before, there is no free lunch in this modern world. If you have to broadcast your news in French, in Japanese, in Chinese, any language, you pay for it. There's a price. You may not count the dollar and pay, but there's a hidden price. The equipment you're using are not free. The airline, the air connection that you're having are not free. So what the president said is just a reminder to us that we have to fund this thing. Because again, going back to the last segment, we are in the wrong place. Fighting to get out of it is ours. It's not for the future generation. Over to you.
It's left to us to actually fight for that, Barrister Mbeseha. Thank you very much. Let's move right ahead over to the next report. The next report is talking about secession, which has drafted quite a lot of debate. We see that French Cameroon's President Paul Biya has reportedly appointed his son, Frank Emmanuel Biya, as Vice President of the Republic of French Cameroon and head of the armed forces, raising questions about succession and power consolidation in the country. The report comes from Arise News and many other news outlets and Nigerian media platform, which said the appointment followed a constitutional change reinstating the post of vice president. According to the report, Frank Biya was also named Minister Delegate at the Minister of Defense and placing him at the heart of Cameroon's military and security structure. If confirmed, this would give the Biya family significant political and military power, especially during a period of ongoing war in Ambazonia. The French Cameroonian government has not officially confirmed the appointment, but then the Cameroonian news agency also issued a statement denying this fact. But experts note that official sentence or silence rather in such matters can itself raise suspicions, particularly when a credible outlet reports the story first. Now we see that this development has sparked debate and speculation. Some observers say it could signal a dynastic succession with power passing from father to son, rather than through democratic processes. Intelligence reports suggest that early leaks of the story may reflect internal disorganization or conflict within the government's inner circle. Now we see that President Biya, who is 92 years, started his 8th term in office on November 6, 2025, following a controversial election. He received around 54% of the vote, while opposition candidate Issa Chiboma Bakari claimed victory and rejected the result. Multiple petitions challenging the election were dismissed by the Constitutional Council, citing insufficient evidence. Now, analysts warn that appointing a family member to such a high-level position could deepen public distrust both in Ambazonia and across colonial French Cameroon. Observers fear a precedent for life scenario involving into a family dynasty with limited transparency or public accountability. The Robert Lansing Institute has also noted that such moves often require behind-the-scenes adjustment to the constitution or rulings from loyal institutions to secure a successor's path. Ambazonia resident already worry of colonial French Cameroon's government and policies and all of that. The news adds to concern about power centralization, secrecy, and the future of governance. Now, who holds real power? Is this a handover from father to son? And what might this mean for stability in the region? Well, we will continue to monitor this report closely and report updates as soon as official confirmation is available. Well, Barrister Mbeseha from Biya reportedly elected Vice President of Cameroon in a really tense period of war in southern Cameroon. Some observers are calling this a father-to-son political handover. Do you agree? How do you think this would play out if confirmed, especially in the face of the ongoing war?
Well, it doesn't have any effect on the ongoing war. If he appoints, if Paul Biya appoints from Biya, so be it. Or if the amendment that passed did not say who should appoint, he could appoint his wife. He could appoint anybody he likes, and then give him or she whatever thing he wants the person to do. That's legal within their own definition. But since you've talked about war, in the context of the war, let us go back to it. All we know is that in our own language, Ambazonia, in our own language, former British Southern Cameroon, is fighting Yaoundé. In fact, there's a war between former British Southern Cameroon and former French Cameroon called La République du Cameroon. And so if we translate it to what it is right now, we have people here who don't support this war, who still they dream of a federation. Why are they doing this? Why are they doing this amendment now? It is because they are looking for the succession story of power in Cameroon. And I will go first to say that Cameroon that we know has been a country of constitutional manipulations since it was created in the 1960s. They got independence 1st of January 1960 without a constitution. They had no constitution when 1st January 1960 came. They had to manipulate themselves into one, dictated to them by France. That's their cup of tea. But what I want to say, succession, because when this thing was first rumored that they are trying to create the post of a vice president, people sang the song, oh, an Anglophone vice president, an Anglophone vice president. As per the text, it doesn't say Anglophone, it doesn't say Francophone. He could willingly give it to an Anglophone if he likes. His tush, his girlfriend, his personal boyfriend, his kitchen cook, whoever he cares. Who speaks English, that will be an Anglophone. But the people who sang the song of an Anglophone vice president completely went offside. They didn't understand what they're talking about. This is what concerns me. Because in the federation that they abolished, the so-called September 1st, 1961 federal constitution, there was a proper layout for a vice president, which vice president was to be elected, which vice president would succeed if the president died. But that vice presidency or presidency was not dedicated to francophones or anglophones. No, that's what the mistake they will make. The vice president that Frontier was, the vice president that Mona came to be, was not part of the Anglophone community idea. As per Article 9 of their constitution then, and if you permit me, I can read it. Article 9 of the Federal Constitution of 1st September 1961 stated thus, Article 9, no, Article 8, let me start with Article 8. 1. The President of the Federal Republic of Cameroon, the federal government, shall ensure respect to the federal constitution and the integrity of the federation, and shall be responsible for the conduct of the affairs of the federation. Article 8, he shall be assisted in his tasks by the Vice President of the Federal Republic. And then Article 9 came, which is very important. That there who is the Vice President. Article 9, the President and Vice President of the Federal Republic shall be elected together on the same list, both candidates on which may not come from the same federated state by universal federated state. So they created a post of a vice president, where the president, along with the vice president, there was made clear that the president and the vice president shall not come from the same federated state. They didn't say from the francophone. They said federated state. So the vice presidency or the presidency was not allocated to language. It was defined by the state from which it came. And if you can remember, in that constitution, there were only two federated states. There was the federated state of East Cameroon, speaking French. There was a federated state of West Cameroon, speaking English. But the federated states were not defined by the language they spoke. They were defined by the territory that they occupy. West Cameroon, East Cameroon. Because down the road, in 1961, we were speaking to English today. They were speaking French, they were speaking French. What if down the road the people of West Cameroon decide to change their to Bali, to Lamsa, or to Bayangi, and say this is a national language? Would that have the status of West Cameroon? No. What if the state down the road decided to change their official language from French to Owo, to Bassa, to would that have changed their status as a West Cameroon? No. And so these people functions of vice president which have been appointed were designed in 1961 to rotate between two states, not language. That's West Cameroon, East Cameroon. That's the way rotation was. And that's why I said that a country with constitutional mandates. This constitution in 1960 got a referendum. And they've gone down and produced many other constitutions, 72, 1984, amendment, 1979, amendment, 96 constitution, and they have coming back to it, but in a different format. Dividend, whoever is the president right now, but we know it's Biya, who will know, remember, everything is an old man, he's on his dying bed, giving the right to appoint whoever he likes, including whoever to him. And so, of any concern to us, your question was, who do to the ambassador? Who do nothing to the ambassador? Let the, whatever, his wife, let it be Chandongo, let it be anybody of the world he remains. He is going to be the vice president of East Cameroon now, like partners, which became fighting Southern Cameroon, which has become Ambazonia. So whoever succeeds poor Biya tomorrow, if he dies this night, let him tie his girdle. Let him come back to the war front, because that's where the war will be fought. And to be fought on a better ground right now. Because the Akeremunas, as who were there with them, realized as early as this morning that the idea of living over there, living in the wrong territory. As Ambassador Fosung, we're in the wrong place. Let us go back home. Arms and armor will come back home. We will fight, because where there's justice, there's a way. It is a cause for justice. It is a cause for freedom. We've done no harm to anybody, but we cannot be suppressed forever and ever. The Njeri Tumes are dead. The Fossungs are dead. The Munas and the Funchas are dead, but the cause is not dead. Over to you.
Yeah, the cause is not dead. It is one of justice and freedom. Well, let's move right ahead over to this report coming in from Buea. Tension continues to grip southern Cameroon as insecurity deepens in Buea, where a resident was shot while trying to protect his wife from armed robbers. Nguni Obeina, a real estate agent based in Bonduma, Buea, is currently receiving treatment after surviving a gunshot wound to the chest during a late-night attack at his residence. The incident occurred a few days ago when two armed men reportedly broke into his home. The assailant forced him to hand over money and drained his mobile money account before turning their attention to his wife. According to accounts from the victim, the situation escalated when the attackers attempted to sexually assault his wife in his presence. He resisted, leading to a struggle inside the house that quickly turned violent. Now, during the confrontation, Ngoni managed to push back and create an opening to escape while raising alarm. In the process, one of the attackers opened fire, shooting him in the chest. The bullet passed through his body but narrowly missed the vital organs. The sound of the gunshot reportedly caused panic, forcing the attackers to flee the scene over fears that neighbors might respond. He was then rushed to the Buea Regional Hospital, where he underwent emergency surgery. Medical personnel confirmed he is now in a stable condition and responding to treatment. Now, see that this latest incident adds to growing concerns over the worsening security situation in Ambazonia, where civilians continue to face violent attacks with little to no protection from forces controlling the territory, French Cameroon. Residents say cases of armed robbery, violence, and abuse are becoming increasingly frequent, raising an urgent question about safety and governance in the region. Barrister Mbeseha. Frequent reports of insecurity have dominated headlines this past week. In recent days, we keep reporting situations and report about issues about insecurity, particularly from Bamenda. Today, we turn our attention to Buea, where a terrifying attack we've just read by armed robbers was met with sharp resistance from a courageous husband defending his wife. Few would act differently in such situation, but I will say that this incident and many more continue to come from the home front. What is your reaction to the growing insecurity in Ambazonia?
Before I deal with the growing insecurity in block, let me congratulate that young man for living up to expectation. The reason why he married a husband or why he married a wife is that you two of you have to live until death. You stand up for your wife, she will stand up for her husband, even till death makes them part ways. And so that young man did what he did, and luckily he didn't die. He survived. We can only wish him the best, that he will recover from his wounds. But the bigger picture, which you have said, which I'm trying to analyze, is what is this alarming insecurity in Ambazonia? It has been in Bamenda. We have analyzed Bamenda so many times. It is going to Mount, it is going to Buea now, or where it is going, or we're talking about it now. It has been there anyway. What does this all mean? I've said this sometimes before. It simply shows absence of governance. Because what is the government intended to do? What they call government, whatever form of government it is supposed to give you security to live, at the very least in your own houses. We don't want to hear the excuse that they're investigating. We don't want to hear the excuse that they cannot find the unarmed, unnamed, or unknown armed men. Those are not excuses for investigating modern crime. If the state If they have the police, if they have the so-called gendarmes, they should be able to perform forensic evidence to get the bullets and be able to dictate where the arms came from. In Cameroon, where guns are specifically restricted to the government, to acquire any arm in Cameroon, it's an uphill task. So they're identifiable. And if there's a gun, if there's a government there, they can trace where that bullet came from. That's what they're supposed to do, to catch the perpetrators. Criminals are not new in the world. They're everywhere in the world. They're here in the United States. But shoot somebody in the United States like that, they will look for you and they will catch you. What the Americans are not doing, they are not using extraordinary human beings. They are using science to dictate criminals. That very science is available everywhere else in the world. And so, if there's a government in Cameroon, they will investigate and bring the criminals to book. If they don't investigate, what do they expect us to conclude? We expect us to conclude they are either colluding with those people or they are the participants. Because if you fail to explain something, you leave the people to find out their own explanation. And so people are being shot and killed in Bamenda. Women are being raped left and right everywhere. People are being shot in Buea, money taken from them. And the government cannot give an explanation. We shall give our own explanation. We shall not exclude the fact that we suspect that they are part of this team of gangsters. Because first and foremost, the guns are owned by them. Buea is not a very large town. Neither is Bamenda. There's nothing so difficult to investigate. But they don't investigate because they don't want to. I remember, let me end it here. We were there with the Bororo issue somewhere in Gambia. The story came out that the people went to report about the harm being done to them by the Bororo, the Fulanese. They reported to the administration, they reported to the governor and so the dues. And what was the response? Rather than investigate what these guys were doing, they told them, go back home, your own children are in the bushes. Go bring them out first, and then we can know how they are doing harm to you. This is a pattern of faking excuses to punish Ambazonians. Whether it is with somebody raping your wife or your husband, or breaking into your house in the day or night, or standing on the road to extort money from you, it is all criminality whose responsibility to investigate lies in the hands of the government. And when they're not doing it, when they're not bringing the perpetrators to book, they bear the responsibility for it. And so Ambazonians have said, this is not what we signed up to. That was never our vision. This is where we are. We must fight and go. With encouragement from the Jolly Tumes, from the Ambassador Fossung, from the Benmunas and the rest who have gone before us. We shall fight until this cankerworm is thrown out of Ambazonia once and for all. Over to you.
Barrister Mbeseha, and to think that the primary responsibility of every government is the security of civilians and for the life of the civilians to be safe and their properties. We'll move right ahead over to this report coming in from Bamenda. Still a case of insecurity. Drivers along the Bamenda-Com road have launched an indefinite strike starting today, Tuesday, April 7th. The transporters say the strike is a response to a surge in kidnappings, harassment, and extortion targeting both drivers and passengers, especially around Bambiu and Bambanki. According to the drivers, they will not resume work until authorities take action to make the road safe. One area of particular concern is the Alaji entrance in Bambiu, which has reportedly become a hotspot for armed men who intercept vehicles and drag passengers into the bush. The strike comes after a week marked by multiple attacks. One driver, speaking on condition of anonymity, recounted being abducted last Friday along with 8 other people, including 5 women and 3 men. They were released the following day after paying a ransom of 50,000 CFA per woman and 100,000 francs CFA per man. Transporters say they hope the strike will push security authorities to step up patrols and prevent further violence. But we will continue to follow this developing story and provide updates on the situation along the Bamenda-Com road. Barrister Mbeseha, drivers have gone on an indefinite strike as it stands now along the Bamenda-Com road due to the kidnappings and extortion. Let's have your reaction. Possibly, after this reaction, educates colonial French Cameroon government on the increasing concern of insecurity in Bamenda, in Buea, and its impact on daily lives and commuters and even transport sector?
I don't know. So if the drivers are going on strike, to make a point, they are right. But will their point go anywhere? No, it will go nowhere. Because that stretch of road, from your news item right there, what is going on there is not new. The checkpoints are permanent. They are well known. Why is the government not going to dismantle the checkpoints? It is in the government. They will not do it because if you go behind the screen, you find that after that very checkpoint, which is deemed, described as illegal, the next 1 kilometer you find one there, which is legal, mounted by security forces. What's the goal of these checkpoints? It's not to do any security. It's not to control the vehicles. It's to extort money from the citizens. And so the administration may act and say, okay, we will stop all that. But their idea is not to help those drivers. The idea is to put the drivers back on the road so that they continue to extort from them as they will, because it's really Bamenda. By the time you reach your next destination, you may find 3 or 4 illegal checkpoints of accomplices with the government. But the 10 others will be government checkpoints. Gendarmes, police, be extorting money from people officially. I say officially. Because the commanders, they know that the checkpoint is there in this particular spot they are on. They expect that guys in that particular checkpoint to come back in the evening with the revenue they have collected there. They know that they are collecting money from those drivers. There is no receipt issued because government has not provided receipts in the first place. Then if you take 10,000 or 5,000, this is a receipt you give. There's no receipt booklet. They're not allowed to do all this. So can the government exculpate itself from it? No. If they needed to have receipts, who would have printed the receipts? The state. It should be receipts printed by the state with numbers. The state will not give the type of receipts I saw ADF given to people in Batibo, where they get a piece of paper and write with a pen. War tax. I give it to you. It has no money, it has no meaning, anybody can write that. But since those things are not being controlled, the government is encouraging them. They could ask the guy, they could today tell the driver, that's what they will do. If it is under control, go back to the road. There will be no extortion again. But that will not stop it. Because it looks to me that the extortion, the official extortion from the people by government agencies, gendarmes, police, theirs is officially done. Because as I've said, their bosses know it. The governor in Bamenda cannot pretend not to know. Neither can the governor in Buea pretend not to know there's a country checkpoint in Moyoka or in Moliko. When they shot that child 2 years ago in Moliko, how far is the Moliko where they killed that child because of extortion from the governor's office? How far is that checkpoint from the governor's residence? Not up to a kilometer apart. And so this is part of the extortion they're getting from us. The poor drivers, I feel sorry for them. But if they must survive, because they're human beings, they have to survive. They have gone through too much, through that extortion, through the torture, because if you don't do it, they will fight you. They could kill you. I remember I saw one again where the Jana was fighting somebody physically. They took his motorcycle, actually engaging the boy in the physical fight. On the ground that the guy did not have papers. Who told you that if you don't have papers, they will seize your vehicle physically and engage in a personal battle with you? No. And they do it all the time. They don't know, they've forgotten that. Some of those street boys, some of those motorbike riders are physically stronger than the police guys. They can beat you to death. Not because you're anything. Just because you wear a uniform doesn't make you physically stronger. No. A good number of those boys doing motorcycle driving, they are going to enter those schools and they will not enter because they have nobody to sponsor them. If it is physical force, they have it more than you. If it is intelligence, they have it more than you. And so, again, poor drivers in Bamenda, that thing will continue to go on. There's no way we can stop it. But if there's nothing they can do to reduce it for now, they don't do it. But the end will only come when we free ourselves from this jungle justice. Over to you.
That is why the struggle still continues till the freedom comes. Thank you very much, Barrister Mbeseha. It's great having you right here on the show. Thank you for the extensive perspective and analysis you brought to the reports right here tonight. This is where we'll let you go, and we hope to have more time with you and having you give us more in-depth analysis as to the reports coming in and the situations on the ground.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll head over to news coming in from Africa. South Sudan President Salva Kiir Mayardit has dismissed the Speaker and Deputy Speaker of the country's parliament, according to presidential decree issued on Tuesday. Former Speaker Jema Nunu Kumba, a member of Kiir's Sudan People's Liberation Movement and a close presidential ally, led the Transitional National Legislative Assembly since 2021. She was the first woman to preside over South Sudan's parliament. Her deputy, Pamina Awirial Along, was also removed. The dismissals followed a petition by SPLM parliamentary caucus members last week, who raised concerns over Kumba's leadership. Several MPs accused her of corruption, including the alleged mismanagement of parliamentary funds, and called for her removal. Kumba, 2 days before her dismissal, issued a statement reaffirming her commitment to South Sudan's constitution and a revitalized peace agreement aimed at resolving the country's ongoing conflict. President Kiir has appointed Joseph Ngeri Pasiko as the new speaker and Abuk Baiti Ayik as deputy speaker. This move comes months after Kiir abruptly fired Finance Minister Barr Chul in February, after just 3 months in office without explanation. Now, also tonight, moving over to Nigeria. In Nigeria, tensions are rising in Kaduna State after conflicting reports emerged over a deadly attack on a church in Ariko village. The Nigerian army said it rescued 31 people after gunmen stormed the church, killing several worshippers. Local leaders in Christian groups, however, dispute the claim. The Christian Association of Nigeria, CAN, says the victims remain in captivity, and local residents report that the death toll is higher than official figures, with some burials already conducted. Northern CAN Chairman Reverend John Joseph Hayab warned that misinformation could worsen the situation by giving armed groups more room to operate, while authorities and communities argue over what actually happened. The Nigerian military has not publicly responded to the conflicting report. The incident comes amid growing international attention over violence targeting Christians in Nigeria, which the government continues to deny. Now we're moving over to what's trending on the globe. U.S. President Donald Trump intensified threat against Iran today, warning of severe consequences if Tehran does not reopen the Strait of Hormuz. The president set a deadline of 8 p.m. Washington time for Iranian authorities to comply. Trump's threats come more than 2 weeks after the United States and Israel launched attacks on Iran, killing more than 2,000 people and targeting schools, residential buildings, and medical facilities. Despite the strikes, Iran's governing structure has largely remained intact, with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps leading military operations. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei has been replaced by his son Mujtaba. Iran has responded with rocket and drone attacks on U.S. and Israeli assets across the Middle East and has blocked most shipping through the Straits of Hormuz, driving global energy prices higher. Legal experts have warned that targeting civilian infrastructure constitutes a war crime. U.S. advocacy groups have called for a stronger international response to Trump's rhetoric. Despite his aggressive stance, President Trump left open the possibility of a diplomatic solution, emphasizing the potential for a negotiated outcome, even as he demanded compliance. Iranian officials have signaled they will respond to any escalation with additional military measures in the region. The standoff marks one of the most serious crises between the U.S. and Iran in decades, drawing widespread international attention and concern over civilian casualties and regional stability. Also tonight, we're bringing you over a new development. NASA's Artemis 2 astronauts are on their way back to Earth after completing a historic journey around the far side of the moon, marking humanity's deepest venture into space since the Apollo missions. The crew of 3 Americans and 1 Canadian traveled farther from Earth than any humans in history, surpassing the distance achieved by Apollo 13 in 1970. During the 7-hour flyby, the spacecraft passed behind the moon, causing a 40-minute communications blackout. The astronauts observed unprecedented views of both the moon and Earth. The mission provides critical data for NASA's plans to land astronauts near the moon's south pole in the coming years. The crew is expected to conclude the mission with a Pacific Ocean splashdown later this week, completing a new chapter in lunar exploration. Well, and with that, we've come to the end of the news on today's Undaunted, bringing into the news Untold Stories. But before we go, a recap of our major headlines. President Sako pays tribute to Ambassador Henry Fosung, launches Ambazonia media diplomacy drive. Tonight, to take a look at Frank Biya, appointed vice president. French Cameroon faces father-to-son succession debate. Tonight, Buea driver shot while defending wife from armed robbers in Bonduma. Also tonight, we took a look at security crisis on Bamenda Road, where drivers launched indefinite strike over kidnapping and extortion. On African scene, we saw Nigerian Christian group reject army claim in Cardinal Church attack. On the global scene, Trump escalates threat as deadline looms for Iran to reopen Strait of Hormuz. And that is all on tonight Undaunted, bringing into the news Untold Stories. On behalf of the entire Undaunted team, we say thank you for joining. Good night and God bless.